Nevada's early attempts to regulate gambling were grossly inadequate in keeping organized crime at bay. Metro Intelligence Commander Preston Hubbs remarked, "We've had exceedingly honest people administering gambling over the years." Nevada Senator Paul Laxalt added, "The raw politics of casino regulation can be an awesome thing." When figures like Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky were laying the foundation for the modern Las Vegas casino industry, the State Gaming Control Board was still over a decade away from conception. By the time regulation became law, the mob had already entrenched itself in the industry. Arguments abound on why organized crime continued to thrive in Nevada. Some say the mob outmaneuvered regulators, while others claim gaming officials either ignored or were unequipped to combat the problem. Accusations persist that some Nevada politicians prioritized personal, economic, and political well-being over the state's integrity. Regardless of the cause, lax regulation granted the mob an open invitation into Nevada. In contrast, New Jersey adopted a much stricter approach, which some financial institutions favored, believing it provided greater credibility to gaming operations. A primary regulatory failure was the lack of scrutiny over casino financing. Whether through Teamster-backed loans or well-hidden mob investments, authorities routinely overlooked the sources of casino funds. "Gambling is a high-volume cash transaction business," Hubbs explained. "The best financial minds the mob had, led by Meyer Lansky, created intricate money-moving systems that would take years to uncover. Regulation only gained traction when federal strike forces, beginning in the Kennedy administration, pressured Nevada into pushing out its most notorious gangsters. The late 1940s and 1950s were a golden age for mob penetration into Nevada's casino scene. The Flamingo, Desert Inn, and Thunderbird opened with virtually no oversight. Organized crime figures like Doc Stracker, who launched the Sands in 1952 despite a criminal history that later led to his deportation, operated with impunity. At that time, Nevada had no separate gaming agency, allowing notorious underworld figures to solidify their control over the industry. Law professor Jerome Skolnick noted, "By grandfathering in large numbers of illegal gamblers with organized crime ties, Nevada cemented its image as a pariah industry." The 1950s also saw the rise of fronts like Parvin Dorman, which controlled multiple casinos under the guise of legitimacy. The firm's chairman, Delbert Coleman, was linked to the Chicago Underworld and forced to offload his stock following federal scrutiny. Coleman had business dealings with Sidney Korshak, a known mob fixer with ties to the Chicago crime family. Even as Nevada sought corporate investment to clean up its industry, figures like Howard Hughes were rare exceptions. Many corporations continued to obscure organized crime's influence rather than eliminate it. As governors changed, so did the official stance on organized crime. Mike O'Callaghan in 1971 acknowledged a growing problem, while his successor, Robert List, hesitated to admit its severity. By 1974, List claimed the mob had been ousted from gaming, an assertion contradicted by evidence of Mafia involvement in major casinos like the Stardust, Tropicana, Aladdin, and Hacienda. "Nevada has done a poor job of screening gaming applicants," said Patrick Healy of the Chicago Crime Commission. "You've got to dig 4 or 5 layers deep to find out who owns these casinos." Despite efforts at reform, the state continued to licensing figures with questionable ties. The Perlman brothers, who sought to acquire the Dunes, were deemed unfit for licensing in New Jersey due to connections with Alvin Malnick, a Lansky associate. Yet Nevada approved their purchase, illustrating stark regulatory contrasts between the states. Former Gaming Control Board Chairman James Avance admitted they made mistakes. One of the most contentious issues in gaming regulation remains the influence of organized crime through associations. The concept revolves around whether an individual's connections to known criminals make them unsuitable for a gaming license. A prime example is Frank Fertita, a respected casino owner whose relationship with Carl Thomas, a convicted figure involved in the Kansas City crime family's Tropicana skimming operation, raised suspicions. When Thomas relinquished his casino license, Fertita took over operations at the Palace Station. Rumors circulated that Thomas maintained an office at the casino even after his mob links became public. Fertita's attorney, Frank Schreck, fiercely denied these allegations, arguing, "Nobody has ever denied Fertita, and Thomas were friends." But Thomas would never set foot in the Palace Station. Similarly, John Bonifacio, John Boney, a Sahara casino manager, faced scrutiny over ties to reputed mobsters Anthony Spilotro and Joey Cusumano. According to a 1983 confidential Las Vegas Metro Police report, Boney was allegedly involved in loan sharking activities. In a licensing hearing, Boney admitted knowing Cusumano since 1969, but denied any business dealings with him. Despite concerns, the Gaming Commission approved his license, with then-Chairman Carl Dodge advising, "For your own welfare, I would advise disassociation." The challenge of eradicating organized crime from Nevada gaming remains ongoing. Former FBI agent Robert Blakey noted, "This isn't the 1960s when the governor denied mob influence, but the effort to infiltrate casinos will never stop. If Nevada wants to maintain credibility, it must continuously fight to keep criminals out." The battle between regulators and the mob has evolved, but the underlying issue remains: as long as cash flows through casinos, organized crime will seek a foothold. Without vigilant enforcement, the same mistakes that allowed Lansky and his ilk to dominate Las Vegas in the past could repeat in the future. Nevada's gambling regulation failed to prevent organized crime from infiltrating casinos. By the time the State Gaming Control Board was established, figures like Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky had already cemented their influence. Lax oversight allowed the mob to thrive, while states like New Jersey enforced stricter policies that earned greater financial credibility. One of the biggest regulatory failures was ignoring the source of casino financing. The Teamsters Pension Fund and hidden mob loans funneled millions into Las Vegas. The best financial minds the mob had, led by Meyer Lansky, created intricate money-moving systems that would take years to uncover, said Metro Intelligence Commander Preston Hubbs. Only when federal strike forces pressured Nevada did real regulatory efforts begin. In the 1940s and 1950s, casinos like the Flamingo, Desert Inn, and Thunderbird opened with virtually no scrutiny. Figures like Doc Stacher, who launched the Sands despite a criminal history, faced little resistance. Law professor Jerome Skolnick observed that Nevada, grandfathered in illegal gamblers with organized crime ties, cementing its image as a pariah industry. The rise of corporate casino ownership meant to clean up the industry, often masked continued mob influence. Parvin Dorman, a front for organized crime, controlled multiple casinos. Its chairman, Delbert Coleman, had ties to the Chicago mob, and his associate Sidney Korshak was a known mob fixer. Howard Hughes was one of the few exceptions among corporate investors. By 1974, Nevada officials claimed to have eradicated organized crime from gaming, but evidence suggested otherwise. Casinos like the Stardust, Tropicana, and Aladdin remained mob-controlled. "You've got to dig 4 or 5 layers deep to find out who owns these casinos," said Patrick Healy of the Chicago Crime Commission. Despite this, figures with questionable connections, like the Perlman brothers, were still licensed, even though New Jersey deemed them unfit due to their ties to Alvin Malnick, a Lansky associate. Frank Fertita, a respected casino owner, became a prime example of mob associations influencing gaming regulation. Fertita had a long-standing friendship with Carl Thomas, a convicted figure in the Kansas City crime family's Tropicana skimming operation. Some law enforcement sources allege Thomas continued to have influence at Palace Station after Fertita took over, though Fertita's attorney, Frank Schreck, denied it. Nobody has ever denied Fertita and Thomas were friends. but Thomas would never set foot in the Palace station, he argued. Similarly, John Bonifacio, John Boney, a Sahara casino manager, was scrutinized for ties to reputed mobsters Anthony Spilotro and Joey Cusumano. A 1983 Las Vegas Metro Police report suggested Boney was involved in loan sharking, though he denied business dealings with Cusumano. Despite concerns, the Gaming Commission approved his license, with Chairman Carl Dodge advising him to sever ties. Former FBI agent Robert Blakey warned that the effort to infiltrate casinos would never stop. If Nevada wants to maintain credibility, it must continuously fight to keep criminals out. The struggle between regulators and organized crime persists. As long as cash flows through casinos, the mob will seek a foothold. John Bonifacio is the casino manager at the Sahara on the Las Vegas Strip, and Frank Fertita owns a casino nearby. Both men are successful gaming executives, and both are licensed by the Nevada Gaming Commission. And both have been described by some quarters of law enforcement as having associations with reputed organized crime figures. They're not alone when it comes to the explosive issue of who is an underworld associate and who is not. But this stands as a textbook case in trying to understand the nebulous world of associations and in coming to grips with how Nevada gaming regulators have approached this most volatile, often secret, enforcement problem. John Bonifacio, known better as John Boney, has worked at several casinos in Las Vegas, most recently at the jointly owned Sahara Hacienda properties on the north and south sections of the Strip. As did Fertita, Boney referred questions from the Gazette-Journal to his lawyer. Discussing Boney's alleged associations, Sahara Corporate Counsel and Vice President Bill Raggio of Reno said, "Since Mr. Bonifacio was licensed as a key employee, Hacienda Resorts, now Sahara Resorts, has had no indication of any kind from the Nevada Gaming Control Board or the Gaming Commission that there had been any problems with Mr. Bonifacio's licensure. Mr. Boney, during all this period, has been a capable, efficient, and trustworthy individual in connection with his duties as casino manager." Indeed, sources within gaming control say there are no active investigations of Boney in connection with any improper activities. According to a confidential internal staff report prepared in 1983 by the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, Boney has past associations with not only Anthony Spilotro, the reputed Chicago Underworld soldier and resident agent in Las Vegas, but also with Joey Cusumano as a possible candidate for Nevada's Black Book of persons excluded from casinos. Metro also indicates Boney was involved in loan sharking out of a Las Vegas casino with Cusumano, although neither have been convicted of any crime. Those issues and others came before the Control Board in 1982, and Raggio referred the Gazette-Journal to transcripts of those licensing hearings in August 1982. While Boney acknowledged working at the defunct Argent casinos, which have been heavily involved in skimming by organized crime families, he has never been implicated in any of the scams. Boney said he met Cusumano in 1969 or 1970, while Boney's wife was performing at the Flamingo Hotel. Cusumano came in to see the show with a mutual friend of ours, who was at that time the matron at the Copacabana in New York City. Joey had come in with this friend of ours and he introduced me to him. While Boney said he and Cusumano became friendly, he said the two never had mutual business dealings, other than that they both worked at the Las Vegas Golden Nugget at the same time as Baccarat trainees. "Did you and Mr. Cusumano, during your period of employment at the Golden Nugget, loan money?" he was asked by former Control Board Chairman Richard Bunker. "No, I did not lend any money." "Have you ever loaned money through Mr. Cusumano?" "No, I have not." "There are some reports that you both were involved in loaning money while you were at the Golden Nugget." "Well, I think those reports are not true as far as I am concerned. I did not lend anybody any money." Asked to describe his association with Cusumano, Boni said he hadn't seen Cusumano in more than 7 months, and while he denied providing complimentary services, comps, to Cusumano, he acknowledged putting up Cusumano's girlfriend at the hacienda for about a month while he was going through a divorce. The room was out of service at that time, and I just took care of the young lady for him. Were you aware of Mr. Cusumano's reputation in the community? Bunker asked. Well, as far as you say his reputation, no. As far as I know about Joey, he's just been a causal relationship with me. I do not travel in those circles. I do not congregate whatever they do, wherever they go. It is not my affair. I don't travel in that lane. Questioned further by Bunker, Boni acknowledged knowing convicted loan shark Jasper Special, who is now completing a prison term, but only on a social level. He also acknowledged helping Special's daughter get an audition for a 21 dealer's job, which she eventually got. Bunker then asked Boni whether he knew a handful of other men, and while he acknowledged knowing them, he denied any close relationship. Are you aware that several of these gentlemen are convicted felons? No, I was not. But you also were aware they weren't Sunday school teachers? Then, later. Being a licensee in the state of Nevada, Mr. Boni, do you think it is in your best interests to be acquainted with people like this? No, it is not. But if they come in the hotel, what can I possibly do aside from being very rude, telling them, stay the heck out of here? If somebody comes in the hotel, what can I possibly do? I don't go out socially with them. Bunker voted against licensing Boni, while fellow members Dale Askew and Stratton voted to approve. Said Bunker, I don't think the Mr. Bonifacio, Mr. Boni's associations are suitable, and he can rest assured that in his association at the Sahara Hotel, that if anything happens, like has happened at the hacienda, he will be hearing from us again. 1 week later, the Gaming Commission unanimously approved Boni after the 45-year-old casino executive promised to try my hardest to sever his ties to Cusumano. It is your province if you disassociate, former Commission Chairman Carl Dodge told Boni. For your own welfare in the future, I would advise that. According to Metro, Boni attended Cusumano's wedding in New York the following year. Boni serves as one example of a man whose past almost cost him his job as a gaming executive. Another Las Vegas man, Frank Fertita, serves as an example of a man about whom much has been said, but little has been proven. When Fertita's attorney, Frank Schreck, was told by the Gazette-Journal what some law enforcement officials have been saying about his client, he exploded. Schreck, a former gaming commissioner and now probably the leading gaming attorney in the state, aimed a string of epithets at a select group of former Metro police officials whom he suspected were behind what he called a smear campaign against Fertita. At issue here is Fertita's longtime friendship with former partner Carl Thomas, who was a highly regarded casino official in Las Vegas, until it was disclosed that Thomas was linked to the Kansas City crime family. More precisely, at issue is Fertita's associations with the former skim artist Thomas. One law enforcement official told the Gazette-Journal that when Thomas voluntarily turned in his casino license, Fertita became the titular chief of the old Bingo Palace, now the Palace Station. Another went a step further, claiming Thomas maintained an office in the casino even after it was disclosed. He was instrumental in skimming the Tropicana in Las Vegas. Thomas, now in prison, maintains he never took any money for himself out of the Tropicana. Totally untrue, Schreck said when asked about the allegations. Number 1, Carl Thomas would never go into the place. Schreck didn't get to number 2 until later in the interview, but it amounted to Fertita not allowing his old friend into the Palace Station. Nobody has ever denied that Frank Fertita and Carl Thomas were friends, Schreck said. They grew up together. Schreck said Thomas and Fertita turned what was almost universally thought to be a losing proposition, now the Palace Station, into a moneymaker. And he said Fertita has continued the casino, and paying off the only loans the pattern, rolling the profits back into the casino, has had to Valley Bank of Nevada. He also said Thomas's office was actually at the Slots of Fun, which he also owned. As with Boney, Fertita is not currently under Gaming Control Board investigation for any wrongdoing, although his ties to Thomas have not been written off. Look at associations, Shrek said. The whole to see if a person associated with an individual, not acquainted with but associated with, that the person can influence you or control what you do. What you are trying to do in gaming control is to try to keep from contact with the casinos, the bad guys, the ones you're worried about. It's to stop people from being involved in gaming who aren't supposed to be involved in gaming. When the leaders of 7 of the nation's top 9 crime families met in Philadelphia in 1979 to redraw their territorial boundaries, it was suggested that the Chicago outfit focus on the West and stay away from Atlantic City. In return, Chicago secured what amounted to preemptive territorial rights over Nevada. While the outfit retains many of those privileges today, other crime families continue to operate in the state with success. Nevada's casino industry remains the core of the Mafia's interests in Las Vegas, but the Underworld has undergone significant changes in its approach, gradually incorporating crude street crimes alongside traditional skimming operations. You might say they perpetuate other forms of street crime, said a retired federal agent. They are parasitic. The indictment of the hole-in-the-wall gang was a landmark achievement in that it made people realize what these guys are doing. People were paying tribute to Chicago through our friend Anthony Spilotro. That was instructive to Las Vegas authorities. Las Vegas Metro Intelligence Commander Preston Hubbs agreed, to an extent. There are 2 thoughts and 2 theories. Yes, organized crime contributes heavily to street crime. There is narcotics, prostitution, and yes, if not for that, street crime would be lower than it is, he said. However, he added that the mob's street crime operations declined after Sheriff John Moran reorganized the Metro Police Department when it merged with the county sheriff's office. Look at the last 5 or 6 years, said a federal law enforcement source, arguing that the mob has always been involved in Las Vegas street crime. They did not suddenly triple their income. The idea that La Cosa Nostra was not committing burglaries for years is a myth. The hole-in-the-wall gang drove that point home. Here is a sampling of some of the mob's contemporary endeavors in the Silver State, based on police reports, interviews with law enforcement officials, and other documents from across the country. Despite his mounting legal troubles, Spilotro continues to be viewed as the man to see in Las Vegas. He faces trial next month on racketeering and murder charges, and will likely face another trial later this year in connection with the Chicago and Kansas City crime families for maintaining hidden interests in 4 Las Vegas casinos. Yet, authorities say he still commands a strong following of dedicated soldiers in his role as the Chicago outfit's resident agent in Las Vegas. He has been alternately described as a mob overseer in Nevada and a low-level Chicago street punk. But no discussion of the Mafia in Nevada is complete without mentioning him. According to federal informants, the mob's commission, an arbitration body made up of the leaders of the nation's top crime families, met at a Philadelphia restaurant in 1979 to discuss a new and explosive issue. Atlantic City was opening its casinos, and crime families were at war over a share of the action. Attending the meeting, according to informants who were present, were representatives from all 5 New York families: Carlo Gambino, Joe Bonanno, Vito Genovese, Thomas Lucchese, and Joe Colombo. Angelo Bruno's family, which controlled New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania, was also present, as were representatives from Chicago. Detroit's Zerilli family was absent due to internal upheavals following the death of Joseph Zerilli 3 years earlier, and the Stefano Magaddino family of Buffalo was also missing for reasons that have never been explained. After the 6-hour conference, control of Las Vegas was, for practical purposes, handed over to Chicago. In exchange, the outfit was ordered to stay out of Atlantic City. The Chicago people were pretty upset about it, an informant later recalled. According to some law enforcement sources, the agreement required family representatives conducting business in Las Vegas to report to Spilotro, who had arrived in Nevada in 1971. Not all officials agree with that assessment of Spilotro's alleged power. However, his title is soldier in the Chicago family, said one high-ranking law enforcement source. But because he is in Las Vegas and is about the highest-ranking member there, he carries more weight than a soldier normally would. People come to him. The source disputed claims that non-Chicago mobsters paid tribute, or a cut of their earnings, to Spilotro. You might do that, but not because Chicago runs Las Vegas, he said. Las Vegas is still an open city. Chicago has no more bragging rights than any other family. Other underworld figures do not have to check with Chicago. But if I came into a strange city like Las Vegas, because Tony does have a lot of weight there, I would have a courtesy sit down with him. You know, say, "Hello, I am from so-and-so." Commander Hubbs was far less diplomatic in his assessment of Spilotro, calling him the lowest representation of a human life form. In his 14 years in Las Vegas, Spilotro has been called far worse. Regardless, those with close ties to Spilotro have historically drawn increased attention from federal and local law enforcement agencies. Herbert Blitzstein, known on the Las Vegas streets as Fat Herbie, arrived from Chicago in May 1974, reportedly as Spilotro's right-hand man. Blitzstein, known for placing bets on Spilotro's behalf, since Spilotro was not permitted inside gaming establishments, was indicted alongside Spilotro on racketeering charges. He is frequently seen in the company of many known Spilotro associates, including former Metro Police Officer Joe Blasco, Jack Salem, John Spilotro, Sam Spiegel, Joey Cusumano, Vincent Montalto, Jerry Constanza, Ed DeLeo, and Jasper Speciale. All of these individuals, along with others, have long been a source of concern and frustration for the Metro Police Department. Blitzstein's attorneys have asked federal magistrate Philip Pro to dismiss the charges against him, claiming that a witness lied to the grand jury that handed down the indictment against the group. Jasper Speciale, who previously operated an illegal bookmaking operation out of his former business, Jasper's Manhattan Florists in Las Vegas, is currently being housed in a pre-release halfway house following a bookmaking conviction. His attorney, Steve Stein of Las Vegas, stated that Speciale is in poor health and, despite his incarceration, is not in a condition to grant an interview. However, Stein strongly rejected allegations made during Speciale's federal court trial, linking him to organized crime, particularly to the New York-based Genovese crime family. If you want to believe all the hogwash, the propaganda the government put out, feel free, said Stein, who is himself a former prosecutor. He argued against the government's claim that Speciale was associated with the mob, and the presiding judge ultimately dismissed the allegation. He's not a made member of the Genovese family, countered a high-ranking federal law enforcement source, but he is a long-term associate. Convicted alongside Speciale in the bookmaking operation was Joseph Covello, whom the United States Senate Judiciary Committee identified in 1983 as a soldier in the Gambino crime family, conducting business in Las Vegas. Federal court records on file in Las Vegas indicate that Speciale was convicted in 1976 of extortionate collection of an unlawful debt, loan sharking, which resulted in a 4-year prison sentence. While Stein maintains that his client has no ties to organized crime, a federal prison official in Boron, California, expressed doubts. In a letter to United States Judge Harold Fong of Hawaii, who had ordered Speciale's incarceration at the Federal Correctional Institution in Boron, Federal Prison System Regional Director Ogis Fields stated, "Information available to us indicates that Mr. Speciale has a significant involvement with organized crime. We have numerous inmates at the Boron facility who must be separated from members of organized crime. and to place Mr. Speciale there would not be in their best interest. Former Dunes casino dealer Joe Bomarito has been identified in confidential police documents as having an association with Spilotro. Bomarito has also been classified by Metro Police as a made member of the Detroit La Cosa Nostra, meaning he has taken the blood oath and is officially part of the crime family. Bomarito also maintains ties to Cosmo Panarelli, a Las Vegas bookie with connections to both the Chicago outfit and the Boston crime family, according to law enforcement sources. In June, Las Vegas loan shark Francis Caravello, 60 years old, who, according to Metro Police, has ties to Spilotro, was sentenced to 10 years in prison after pleading guilty to 2 counts of extortion and 1 count of racketeering. Federal Judge Howard McKibben stated that he would have sentenced Caravello to a longer prison term if not for what McKibben described as Caravello's only 2 redeeming qualities: his advanced age and poor health. Vito Di Filippo, who has not been seen in Las Vegas for several months, also has ties to both Panarelli and Bomarito. He arrived in Las Vegas in 1970, and reports indicate that he is a capo regime, a captain, in the Bonanno crime family of New York. Di Filippo's past associations illustrate not only cross-family alliances, he has been linked to Chicago's Spilotro, but also the Mafia's continued push toward legitimate business fronts. Di Filippo has been involved in several Las Vegas establishments, including the Fast Break Lounge, the Gypsy the Second Lounge, and the Crazy Horse. Di Filippo's son, Patrick, has worked as a dealer at Caesar's Palace, but law enforcement reports classify him as little more than an errand boy for his father. Joey Cusumano, a close associate of Spilotro, has also been linked, through law enforcement intelligence reports, to the New York-based Genovese crime family, from which authorities claim he derived much of his power. Cusumano, the owner of tax and accounting on East Desert Inn Road, has been identified by law enforcement intelligence sources as being involved in loan sharking, fencing stolen goods, extortion, and bookmaking. He has never been convicted of any crime. Sources say Joey Cusumano's late father worked with members of the Colombo crime family in New York. They believe the younger Cusumano reported to Vincent Gigante, a Genovese crime family capo regime. Cusumano's attorney, Oscar Goodman of Las Vegas, who represents several other reputed organized crime figures, filed a federal lawsuit earlier this year against the state in an attempt to keep his client out of the Nevada Black Book, the list of individuals excluded from entering casinos. The lawsuit was dismissed earlier this month by a federal judge. Cusumano is considered a likely addition to the Black Book when the Nevada Gaming Control Board reviews new names later this year. Eugene Cimorelli, an associate of Spilotro, was a key employee at Alan Glick's Argent Corporation before Glick was forced to sell Argent's casinos amid skimming allegations. Cimorelli, a former owner of the Fred Astaire dance studio in Las Vegas, was also frequently seen with members of the Kansas City crime family, the primary La Cosa Nostra group involved in the Argent skimming operations. Lawrence Musso, a former Aladdin Hotel and casino boxman, has been identified as a made member of the Kansas City crime family since 1968. He has long-standing associations with Spilotro, Cosmo Panarelli, Joe Bomarito, and Vito Di Filippo. John Vaccaro was convicted earlier this year in Reno for his role in what federal authorities describe as the largest slot machine cheating ring ever uncovered. In a recent report to Sheriff John Moran, Commander Preston Hubbs noted that Los Angeles bookmaker Peter John Milano and Steven Sino, who was sent west by the Buffalo crime family, were arrested alongside several other suspects during a Los Angeles bookmaking raid last October. Hubbs stated that Chino and Milano have been associated with John Vaccaro of Las Vegas. Vaccaro has been involved in virtually every type of gaming crime imaginable. He was convicted of operating illegal gambling operations in Southern California with Milano in the mid-1970s and has been tied to Chino on several occasions. In a subsequent reference, Hubs further noted, a tie to Spilotro has been established with a number of individuals who have been actively involved in ongoing casino cheating operations. The most notable among these thieves is John Vaccaro, who's been involved in cheating scams and crooked gambling operations in at least 3 states. By directing large-scale cheating operations, Vaccaro has stolen significant sums from Nevada's casinos. A confidential Metro police report also states that Vaccaro has ties to both the Smaldon crime family in Denver and the more sophisticated Marcello crime family in New Orleans. Vincent Montalto, who refers to himself as a professional gambler, has only one documented job in his adult life, serving as a checker for the New York Longshoremen's Union several years ago. His known associates include Spilotro, Cusumano, and 2 of Spilotro's former California operatives, Chris Petty and Joey Hansen. Both Petty and Hansen have been convicted on federal charges. Montalto himself was convicted of interstate transportation of wagering information, along with Petty, who law enforcement sources claim once represented Spilotro's interests in San Diego. Federal and local authorities provide widely differing estimates on the number of MAID members operating in Las Vegas. In an interview with the Gazette-Journal, Commander Hubs was hesitant when asked for specifics. "We keep track of MAID members and any connections they have with Las Vegas," he said, declining to reveal how many such members currently reside in the city, or how many of their non-MAID associates are still active. "All I can say is they're here, and contrary to what Oscar Goodman says, they're still here." Hubs was referring to Las Vegas attorney Oscar Goodman, who has publicly claimed that the days of active mob involvement in Las Vegas are long gone. "There aren't as many of them as in the days before corporate ownership of casinos," Hubs admitted. "But anyone who says they're not here at all hasn't been reading the newspapers lately." A federal law enforcement source said speculation that 18 organized crime families are currently doing business in Nevada is perhaps a little high. There are only 25 families in the entire United States. Chicago Crime Commission Executive Director Patrick Healy confirmed that the Chicago outfit remains deeply involved in Las Vegas. "Over the years, and even today, we, Chicago, exported it to Las Vegas," Healy said. "We sent everyone out to Las Vegas, out to the West Coast. If it weren't for the money, we wouldn't take an interest in Nevada." It is important to note that many of the men listed above, and some of their associates, have been seen increasingly involved in legitimate businesses. However, others have turned to ancillary profit centers, such as prostitution, pornography, and narcotics trafficking, according to Metro Police. Additional individuals flagged by Metro Police as possible, organized crime associates, remain active in various Las Vegas businesses. Tony Spilotro's brother, John, is listed in Clark County business license records as the president of the food factory, located at 5771 East Twain Avenue, just outside the city limits. John Spilotro's wife, Arlene, is listed as the vice president of the business. Anthony Spilotro's wife, Nancy, is listed as both secretary and treasurer. According to a Metro report, John Spilotro is seen daily at various racebooks meeting with bookies and collectors. Las Vegas City business license records show that convicted casino cheat John Vaccaro is listed as vice president of Foursquare Construction Company, located at 3111 South Valley View Boulevard. Vaccaro's wife, Sandra Vaccaro, was convicted alongside her husband on slot cheating charges in Reno. Sandra Vaccaro's father, Vincent Wandra, is listed as president of Foursquare Construction. Anthony Tagano, who holds an active Las Vegas business license for Robin's Nest Florist, located at 1616 Las Vegas Boulevard South, is described in a Metro report as a possible frontman for a legal business connected to organized crime members, and is noted as a Spilotro associate. Records on file with the Nevada Secretary of State list Tagano as Secretary and Treasurer of Robin's Nest. Jack Salem is listed in Metro documents as having a business, Figaro's Italian Food and Pizza, located at 3466 South Decatur Boulevard. According to Metro, Salem's known associates include Anthony and John Spilotro, as well as convicted casino credit fraudster Ed Sarkeesian, who served time in prison during the 1970s for his role in a $900,000 scam at the Tropicana Hotel and Casino. Villa d'Este restaurant, located at 335 Convention Center Drive, is registered as an active business in Clark County Business License Records under Joseph Pignatello. Pignatello, known by various aliases including Joe the Pig, Joe Pigs, and Giuseppe Pignatello, has been described by Metro as primarily an organized crime host since the 1950s in Chicago and Miami. Pignatello's known associates include Anthony and John Spilotro. The late Chicago Mafia dons Sam Giancana and Philip Milwaukee Phil Aldericio, longtime Chicago gangster and Nevada Black Book member Marshall Caifano, and former Stardust Casino executive Frank Lefty Rosenthal. Several Spilotro associates, including Edward DeLeo, a member of Spilotro's alleged hole-in-the-wall gang, according to federal and local law enforcement agencies. Metro documents also link DeLeo to both Villa d'Este and Spilotro's food factory. Additionally, Anthony Dominic Montana, another Spilotro associate, has been connected to Villa d'Este, where he previously worked as a bartender. A federal law enforcement officer described Pignatello dismissively, stating, "He's a nobody. He's an associate of Spilotro, but that's about it." Among the most notable cases of disputed organized crime connections is Palace Station Casino owner Frank Fertita. Fertita, who owns the Palace Station Casino at 2411 West Sahara Avenue, alongside his wife and family, is identified in Metro reports as a former frontman for ousted gaming figure Carl Thomas of Kansas City. Thomas, once regarded as one of the most respected gaming executives in Nevada, was caught on federal wiretaps instructing members of the Kansas City crime family on the methods of skimming money from Las Vegas casinos. Fertita was described by one source as Thomas's #1 man. When Thomas had to step down from the Tropicana and divest himself, Fertita suddenly became the owner of the Bingo Palace, later renamed Palace Station. Las Vegas gaming attorney Frank Schreck, who represents multiple figures in the Nevada gaming industry, strongly denied the allegation, calling it totally untrue. Schreck argued that Fertita had been unfairly targeted, both by law enforcement officials and by federal investigators, who, he claimed, had a habit of casually labeling Las Vegas business owners as mob associates without concrete evidence. Schreck also criticized certain elements within Metro Police for carelessly tarnishing Fertita's reputation without conducting deeper investigations. As an example, Schreck noted that some gaming control officials had suggested that low blackjack table takes at Palace Station could indicate possible skimming operations. However, Schreck countered this theory, stating that Palace Station caters primarily to Las Vegas locals, who tend to be more skilled blackjack players than tourists, resulting in lower-than-average casino profits from table games. Frank Bolognese, also known as Frank Bella, is listed in Nevada Incorporation records as a principal in Chateau Bell and Bella Enterprises in Las Vegas, which is described by Metro as a business consulting firm. Metro identifies Bella as having ties to Tony Spilotro and imprisoned Los Angeles crime boss Mike Rizzitello. Others, such as Philip Thomas Dioguardi, are reportedly used to muscle into legitimate businesses. According to a Metro report, Dioguardi was an associate of the New York-based Colombo crime family. In 1974, it was reported that Dioguardi served as a bodyguard for Joseph Colombo and was standing just 3 feet away from Colombo when the crime boss was shot in Columbus Circle, New York. Metro further states that Dioguardi has been used as a collector and has been involved in taking over local bars and lounges. Is Metro optimistic about winning the battle? There's way too much money involved, and that's the key, said Commander Preston Hubbs. When you start seeing organized crime guys behind the Sundance Hotel and casino with packages, and you give them immunity, and they still refuse to testify, you know you've got a tiger by the tail. In his official report on the status of organized crime in southern Nevada, Hubbs expressed deep pessimism about law enforcement's ability to eradicate the mob from Las Vegas. Most of the nation's criminal organizations are well represented here now. The 1980s have found southern Nevada with a well-functioning alliance of criminals in place and growing in influence. As an added concern, we have found that many, if not most, of our local escort services have strong operational ties to organized crime factions in Ohio, Washington, California, New York, and Illinois. The lucrative cash basis of these businesses makes them a natural target for organized crime. Most disturbing of all has been Chicago's ability, when allied with other mob factions, to infiltrate and control licensed casinos. The resulting loss of tax revenue to the state, as well as the continued perception of Las Vegas as being mob-controlled, is intolerable. Patrick Healy of the Chicago Crime Commission agreed and warned that Nevadans should not be lulled into a false sense of security simply because high-ranking mobsters are being indicted or sent to prison. All you've got now is the head guy with problems instead of the head guy without problems. Being under indictment and walking the streets is no big deal. They're still walking the streets. State, local, and federal law enforcement agencies estimate that 18 of the nation's top 26 or so crime families have representatives looking out for their interests in Las Vegas. Listed below is a capsule. Look at those crime families, their national and regional status, and their involvement in Nevada, Buffalo, New York. Formed by the late Stefano Magaddino, Buffalo's territory includes the upstate area, Niagara, Toronto, and Buffalo. The Las Vegas Metro Police Department notes less than a half dozen associates or members and a few more loosely tied associates in Nevada, principally involved in illegal bookmaking. In October 1984, Stephen Sino, who moved from Buffalo to Las Vegas and then to Los Angeles, was arrested in a bookmaking raid by Los Angeles police. State Gaming Control Board records show that, aside from bookmaking, the Buffalo family also has been involved in setting up Las Vegas junkets. Cleveland. More than any crime family in the United States, the once powerful Cleveland mob has been ruined by indictments and long prison sentences and is rapidly slipping in national prestige. Cleveland grabbed national attention during Prohibition, when groups such as the Mayfield Road Gang made millions in bootlegging and running illegal card games. Many Cleveland associates, such as Buffalo Sino, have migrated from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. Other old-line gamblers and rum runners, such as Las Vegas patriarch Mo Dalitz, have made their millions staying in Nevada. Peter John Milano, a Los Angeles bookie for the last 15 years, was arrested in the 1984 raid, along with Chino, showing a long tie between the Cleveland and Buffalo families. Both Milano and Chino, according to Metro, have been associated with John Vaccaro of Las Vegas. Vaccaro has been involved in virtually every type of gaming crime imaginable. He has been convicted of operating illegal gaming in Southern California with Milano in the mid-70s and has been tied to Chino on several occasions. Vaccaro was convicted earlier this year, along with several co-defendants in a Reno federal court slot cheating trial. Metro is currently monitoring the activities of a dozen people whom we feel are involved with representatives of the Cleveland LCN, La Cosa Nostra, faction, most of whom are now in California. Cleveland financier Milton John Rockman was indicted in the Kansas City Operation Strawman case, in which the federal government arrested the top crime bosses in 4 cities in connection with hidden interests in 4 Las Vegas casinos. Joseph Griffin, agent in charge of the FBI's Cleveland office, has said the remnants of Cleveland LCN is run by the owner of a Cleveland vending machine company, whom he refuses to name. Former boss John Scalish was so powerful at one time that he sat on the Underworld's National Commission, which settled differences among the nation's crime families. Scalish's death in 1976, from natural causes, touched off a violent gang war that led to the deaths of many families and rival figures, culminating in the October 1977 car bomb slaying of racketeer Daniel "Danny" Green. Green allegedly was fighting the Cleveland family for control of rackets, gambling, and other organized crime activities when he was killed. Many prominent Cleveland crime figures, including reputed boss Licavoli, were sent to prison in connection with Green's death, and from the FBI's investigation of a drug ring reportedly once led by Carmen Zagaria for the family. Licavoli, Labor leader Anthony Liberatore, John Calandra, Ronald Carabia, Kenneth Chiachia, and Pasquale Sistanino were convicted by a federal jury on racketeering charges in July 1982. They had been charged in a conspiracy to control organized crime in northern Ohio. Denver. The Smaldone family is among the nation's smallest and weakest. Its chief Las Vegas concerns include business scams and some small-time casino cheating scams. The Metro Intelligence Division also has tied Vaccaro to the Denver family, and Vaccaro's attorney, Dominic Gentile of Las Vegas, has denied the claim. Detroit. The Detroit family, dominated by Joseph Zarelli's Italian mob and the Jewish Purple Gang of the Prohibition era, gained national notoriety when its leaders were nailed for hidden interests in the Aladdin Hotel Casino. Considered one of the best hidden interest jobs in the history of Las Vegas, the Aladdin revelations crippled the Detroit family. Metro says some 24 Las Vegas residents currently have ties to Detroit LCN, but they also are connected to other families as well. Detroit is no longer considered a powerful force in Nevada. Kansas City, St. Louis, Missouri. When the late Nick Civella was spotted at a Mafia commission meeting at Appalachian, New York in 1957, federal authorities got their first clue that he was the boss in Kansas City. After Civella died of natural causes, his brother Carl took over, and with Carl's health rapidly fading, the mantle could fall to Carl DeLuna. But DeLuna's future is equally grim. He, along with Civella and several others, face long prison terms after their powerful convictions in the Tropicana skimming case, and also face trial this year in the Strawman skimming case in Kansas City. In the scheme of the Midwestern mob, Kansas City comes under the jurisdiction of corporate Chicago outfit, as does the smaller St. Louis family, reportedly run today by Matthew Trupiano. While there is a stable of possible leaders lining up for power in Chicago, recent Nevada skimming cases have done immeasurable harm to the Chicago, Kansas City, St. Louis crime faction. Miami. The embattled Santo Traficante runs things in what used to be an open city. Metro is monitoring about a dozen Miami associates in Las Vegas. Milwaukee. The connection to Las Vegas was crystallized with the Strawman operation, which featured the indictments of Milwaukee boss Frank Balistrieri and his lawyer sons. The elder Balistrieri, a key figure in lining up Alan Glick's Teamster loan to buy the Stardust in Las Vegas, has long been viewed as a critical link for lining up Teamster loans. Balistrieri also is serving a 13-year prison term in connection with running an illegal gambling operation. Metro is monitoring some 15 men with alleged ties to the Milwaukee family. Centralized chiefly in the Boston-New Haven areas, Raimondo Patriarca left a power vacuum when he died, and the future in Boston remains clouded. The New England family skipped the 1979 commission meeting because of a power struggle, and the family has shown increasing ties to the New York Genovese family, particularly Francesco Schiavelli, who visits Las Vegas often. Informant Vincent Teresa, author of My Life in the Mafia, told of extensive skimming and other operations in the Patriarca era. Last Valentine's Day, the First National Bank of Boston was implicated in a scam involving the laundering of thousands of dollars in cash for New England Mafia chief Gennaro Angiulo and several of his underlings. The bank is under investigation for failing to report transactions of $10,000 or more to federal authorities, as required by banking laws in an ongoing program to stop money laundering. The Boston Globe has reported that Angiulo and his 4 brothers regularly brought checks of more than $10,000 to the bank, although they were not reported to the federal government. The newspaper said the story was confirmed by a second, unidentified bank employee. The 5 Angiulo brothers are on trial in U.S. District Court in Boston on charges of loan sharking, racketeering, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The FBI has identified Gennaro Angiulo, who has been in jail since he was indicted in 1983, as a principal of New England's Underworld. The Boston trial, expected to run several months, began in mid-June. Prosecutors claim they will further reveal the inner workings of La Cosa Nostra. The 7 defendants are accused in a 22-count federal indictment in September 1983 of running a well-orchestrated crime operation, including 6 gangland killings, illegal gambling, loan sharking, various pornography endeavors, and recruiting lawyers to protect family members. According to court documents in the current trial, based on wiretaps, Angiulo and his associates plotted murders, discussed old killings, and discussed such things as bookmaking and loan sharking during 1981. Angiulo, 66, who has successfully dodged state and federal lawmen for years, faces up to 170 years in prison. New Orleans is considered by many to be the forerunner of the contemporary Mafia. The New Orleans crime family thrived for years under the now aging and imprisoned Carlos Marcello. Metro is watching more than 20 New Orleans associates active in Nevada, most of whom are believed to be involved in casino cheating scams in Las Vegas and Reno. The Marcello Group is a high priority in Metro. The Pennsylvania Crime Commission has been credited by Metro for its high-profile fight, along with federal officials, against the embattled Bruno crime family and its most recent boss, Nicodemo Scarfo. Under the terms of the Commission's 1979 agreement, Pennsylvania received a cut of the New Jersey gambling action and is now a bigger source of concern for the New Jersey State Police than authorities in Nevada. Since his release from the federal prison in La Tuna, Texas, in January 1984, Scarfo reportedly has been trying to restore peace to the South Jersey-Philadelphia war zone. Scarfo, 56, served 2 years in prison on a weapons charge, and law enforcement sources say he is easing into a low-profile role while subduing those operating in his territory, but not part of his organization. The Bruno family, until 1980, a stranger to typical mob violence, erupted in March 1980 with a string of gangland murders as 2 factions vied for control. While Scarfo rose to seize control, the price was heavy. Some 14 high-level family members have been slain over the past 5 years. According to Metro, involvement by the Pennsylvania crime family in Las Vegas is minimal, largely because of the family's extensive involvement in Atlantic City. Chicago. By far the most active and expansionist organized crime family in Nevada, the Chicago outfit has shown an interest in Las Vegas casinos since shortly after World War II. Beyond question, the outfit's most visible operative in Nevada has been Anthony Spilotro, Chicago's reputed capo regime in Las Vegas. The history of the Chicago LCN, which will be discussed later in more detail, can be broken down into 3 major eras. The Capone-Nitti years, followed by the Rica, Accardo, and Giancana era, and finally the Accardo, Ayupa, and Cerrone period. Of primary importance to Nevada is Spilotro's arrival here in 1971, a move that established Chicago's unquestionable beachhead in Nevada, and one followed by the subsequent arrival of several lower-level soldiers working for Spilotro. Spilotro, with an estimated 150 associates in Las Vegas, is recognized as the man to see for any other family doing business in Nevada. Despite his legal and business problems, his power, law enforcement sources say, is unchallenged. Among the victims in the extortion, bid rigging and price-fixing scam were the New York Islanders hockey team and the FBI, which was stuck with inflated expenses while moving to a brand new New York office. Rastelli is among the defendants in this latest indictment, as well as leaders of Teamsters Local 814. Founded by Giuseppe Profaci in 1933, the Colombo family was run by Joe Colombo from 1963 until his shooting death in 1971, when Carmine the Snake Persico took over as underboss. The Colombo family's chief Nevada interest is casino credit fraud, as it is in New Jersey. Alphonse Marola has been named in 5 credit fraud warrants. The Colombo family suffered a major blow in late 1984, when 11 top members were named in a 51-count indictment. Last February, Persico, who was on the FBI's most wanted list, was arrested with 3 other people after spending months on the lam. Persico was arrested with Dominic Donny Shax Montemarano, an alleged leader of the Colombo family, Joseph Russo, and Frederick de Christopher. Persico and Montemarano were indicted last October on charges of extortion, payoffs, mob control of labor unions, embezzlement of union funds, trafficking in heroin and other drugs, multi-million-dollar thefts, illegal gambling, loan sharking, and bribery. The indictments resulted from a 3-year investigation called Operation Star Quest that was conducted by a joint city-federal organized crime task force. The family is run today by Gennaro Jerry Lang Langella, once Persico's underboss. At 44, Langella of Brooklyn is the youngest of New York's alleged mafia dons. Also indicted in February's New York roundup was Ralph Scopo, a tough new Colombo soldier who is also president of the Concrete Workers District Council of the Laborers International Union of North America. The Colombo family was dealt yet another blow in April, when a faction boss and 22 leg busters were indicted on 71 counts alleging assorted crimes. Anthony Colombo, 40, was accused of running a racketeering ring that included such crimes as murder, robbery, and extortion. Anthony's father, Joseph Colombo Sr., once ran the family and has since been exiled to Arizona by ruling members of the Mafia Commission. Anthony's brothers, Joseph Jr., 38, and Vincent, 34, also were indicted on racketeering charges. Edward McDonald, of the Federal Organized Crime Strike Force in Brooklyn, said Anthony Colombo was indicted under the Kingpin statute of running a criminal enterprise, also known as the RICO statute. The old violent mafia still exists, the leg busters, the thugs, the punks, he said of the defendants. The so-called Colombo crew was connected to a phony credit card ring in Las Vegas and a scam in which they allegedly conspired to rob wealthy gambling junketeers on a flight from Farmingdale, New York to Atlantic City. Recognized as the most powerful of New York's 5 crime families, and probably the most powerful of any crime family, the Gambino Group was formed by Carlo Gambino and has been run more recently by the recently indicted Paul Big Paul Castellano and Agnello O'Neill Della Croce. 2 of its most visible members in Las Vegas are Gus Gallo and Jasper Speciale, both of whom have ties to Chicago's Spilotro. The family has been involved in shylocking, and in 1976, a family member turned informant told federal authorities the family also was receiving credit markers from the Aladdin, Tropicana, Riviera, Sands, and the MGM Grand Las Vegas, collecting the markers for a 10% fee. Castellano, 72, of Staten Island, controls some 800 family members and associates. He is the brother-in-law and cousin of founder Carlo Gambino. The family allegedly has wormed its way into various services for Atlantic City casinos, as well as an array of legitimate businesses in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Las Vegas. Castellano was on $2 million bail after being indicted along with 20 others last year on charges they were part of a ring that allegedly killed 25 people. Della Croce, 71, also of Staten Island, is a classic American mafia boss. Federal Judge Arnold Bauman once called him a top-level hoodlum, a danger to society, a menace to the community, a parasite who lives off the lifeblood of honest people. He allegedly was a major hitman for the feared Murder Inc. He was on $1 million bail on federal tax charges. His luck, and that of 9 other Gambino family members, ran out in March when they were indicted on federal racketeering charges. The 2-count indictment charged the 10 suspects in connection with loan sharking, gambling, and hijacking operations over the past 18 years. With this indictment, the GR and jury has identified a new generation of organized crime, said U.S. Attorney Raymond Deary. He said the 3-year Gambino investigation also pointed to Castellano as family boss, although Castellano was not indicted. As with other such racketeering cases, each defendant faces up to 20 years in prison in the case. Named with Della Croce were his son, Armand Della Croce, 29, John Gotti, 44, John Carneglia, 40, Eugene Gotti, 38, Charles Carneglia, 38, Wilfred Johnson, 51, Anthony Rampino, 35, and Nicholas Carrozzo, 45. The Gambino crime family suffered yet another blow in May when alleged capo Joseph Paterno, 51, was indicted in Dade County, Florida, on charges that included conspiracy to commit murder and credit card fraud. The arrest of Paterno and several alleged soldiers uncovered murder plots against 2 New Yorkers, according to Metro Dade County Organized Crime Bureau Chief Arthur Nerbas. Also arrested were Frank Anthony Basto, 48, of Belleville, New Jersey, Carl Joseph Palo Jr., 62, of Fort Lee, New Jersey, Martin Louis Carbone, 59, of Bloomfield, New Jersey, and Thomas Vincent Ignizio, 47, of North Miami Beach. Ignizio was carrying a .22 caliber pistol with a silencer, according to Metro Dade Police. Begun by Charles Lucky Luciano, the Genovese family was run by the late Frank Costello and then Vito Genovese, who died in prison in 1961. It was not clear until recently who the new boss was, particularly after Frank Funzi Thierry's death in early 1981. While the Genovese family is viewed as New York's second most powerful in terms of membership and territory, its activities in Nevada are minimal. Alleged boss and former consigliere, Fat Tony Salerno, 72, was involved in a skimming operation at Caesar's Palace. Salerno, 72, reportedly began in the mob as a wheelman for Mike Coppola, a one-time associate of murdered reputed mobster and Murder Inc. board member Albert Anastasia. Salerno has beaten several criminal cases and has only served 6 months in jail, that for a tax conviction. The smallest family in New York, the Lucchese Group, is of chief concern to Metro because of its involvement in narcotics trafficking. It also has ties to upstate New York through Antonio Tony Ducks Corallo, who was recently indicted. Federal agents planted a radio transmitter in Corallo's Jaguar, picking up enough conversations between Corallo, his chauffeur, and other crime figures to nail down several major indictments. Corallo, 72, has run the Lucchese family since 1974, steering it toward activities such as narcotics, gambling, loan sharking, and some legitimate business enterprises. Police tagged him Ducks for his uncanny talent for avoiding subpoenas. He was arrested at 15 on grand larceny charges and was convicted in the 1960s on charges he tried to bribe a federal judge. He also served time for a kickback scheme and bribery. Also caught in the February indictments was Salvatore Tom Mix Santoro, 69, who once worked for Thomas Three Finger Brown Lucchese. Santoro is allegedly heavily involved in narcotics imports and distribution. Also indicted was Christoph Christy Tick Furnari, whom New Jersey State Police Lieutenant. Colonel Justin Dint said he was the heir apparent to Corallo's throne as head of the Lucchese family. Southern California, among the most colorful of the nation's underworld families, the so-called Mickey Mouse Mafia can be traced to the late 1920s, when Stardust Hotel Casino founder Tony Cornero got his start with offshore gambling ships. Cornero, the bootleg king of California, gave way to Jack Dragner in 1929, and rivalries broke out after Bugsy Siegel's arrival in 1937. Siegel eventually opened Las Vegas's first casino, the Flamingo, but accusations over his alleged embezzlement from the mob during construction led to his execution in June 1947 in Los Angeles. Mickey Cohen rose to power, setting up narcotics operations between California and Mexico and putting Tony Mirabile in charge of San Diego. Mirabile was killed during a holdup, and the Dragna faction tried repeatedly and unsuccessfully to kill Cohen, who eventually died in 1976 of cancer. Dragna, who had taken control of Los Angeles, died in 1956, yielding to Frank DeSimone, who attended the 1957 Appalachian meeting. DeSimone died in 1968, passing the torch to Nick Licata, who died 6 years later, and Los Angeles called on Aladena Fratianno as underboss. Fratianno, running from a mob contract, turned government witness, and Peter John Milano, whose roots can be traced to the Cleveland mob, is the heir apparent to the Los Angeles La Cosa Nostra. However, Milano was caught up in the 1984 bookmaking raids, leaving the situation in Los Angeles as uncertain as ever. In 1980, due largely to the testimony of Jimmy Fratianno, the leadership of the Los Angeles family was hauled into court on racketeering charges, including Louis Tom Dragna, Dominic Bruglia, and Michael Rizzitello. John Vaccaro was indicted in 1973 as part of a Los Angeles group on gambling charges. Some of his co-defendants were identified as organized crime figures. Former Strike Force prosecutor James Twitty said Vaccaro and his partners ran a floating game in Southern California's San Fernando Valley. They had cards, roulette, craps, a Las Vegas casino gambling type thing, said Twitty, and our information was that the games were rigged. There was supposed to be an electromagnet under the roulette table so strong that it made the lights dim. Vaccaro and another Las Vegas man, John Dubeck, ran the operation, Twitty said. When the group was indicted, Dubeck became a prosecution witness, but he refused protective custody. 1 week before the trial, Dubeck and his wife Fran were walking toward their apartment when shotgun blasts ripped across the parking lot. The first shot hit Dubeck in the back, said Twitty. Fran turned when she heard the noise, and the second shot caught her in the face. Both died. The trial was delayed for 6 months, but Vaccaro and his associates all were convicted. They received 4 terms on illegal gambling charges. No arrests ever were made in the Dubeck murders. We ran a significant criminal investigation for quite some time, said Twitty, but we never came up with anything.